Welcome to All Access Live with Kevin Rankin, everybody. Thank you for being here on an incredible Thursday. Last night was fun. We had the Flirts on for the show. And tomorrow, if you come back at the same time, 5 o'clock, we've got Mark Powers, a sort of secret weapon for the Pacific Northwest. Amazing session drummer, fantastic clinician. So make sure that you come back here at the same time. And if you're here, any place other than YouTube, do me a favor. Go to the link below. Go to youtube.com/@accesskevin. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel. You know you want to like this video. Make sure that you share it. And if you so desire, you can actually become a member. So members of this channel have exclusive benefits. You can see videos with buddies like Kelly Kigi from Night Ranger, Cy Kernan from The Fix. We've got Mid-Year from the Ultravox. I've also got some prize packages that I'll be giving away to certain members. So we've got Flock of Seagulls gifts. I've got some Heavy Metal stickers. And maybe we can snag a couple of guitars from Stevie Salas. Who knows? So speaking of Stevie Salas, he's an incredible guitarist. And if you want to play guitar like my next guest, make sure that you check out my sponsor, 5 Star Guitars, based in Beaverton, Oregon. Has a great deal for you. So if you want to play guitars, you want to get lessons, you want to have repairs done, any of those things, go to 5starguitars.com/allaccesslive. You'll have a 15% discount by using the promo code of allaccess15, and everything you see there is discounted just for the show. And if you order outside of California, outside of Oregon, then the beautiful thing is there's no sales tax here. So you're going to save a ton of dough. And hopefully with those lessons that you can get virtually, then you can be fantastic, like my next guest. So you may have seen the promotion about this. This guest has played with pretty much everybody under the sun as far as iconic rock and roll stars go. He also is a filmmaker, has an incredible film that we're going to talk about, and he just received the Lifetime Achievement Award in San Diego. So with no further ado, please welcome my buddy Stevie Salas. How you doing, sir?
Hey, you sound like such a pro.
I've gotten to do a few of these since you and I talked last time. So,
yeah, ladies and gentlemen, Beaver Guitars.
You got that? Yes. I'm working on my radio career when that rock and roll thing doesn't work out. So
you got, but they used to say people have a face for radio, meaning they were ugly. It's like you actually good looking dude. You could probably be on TV as well. So.
Make sure you tell your cousin that, man. He's all about dogging me for. He doesn't like my attire most of the time. I get a lot of fashion tips from that guy. So
he's pretty good at that stuff. He took most of it from me though when he was young. So
I bet, man. Yeah, you can take most of that credit. Yeah, for people that don't know,
we could be on, but he started off as he used to kind of like pal around and live in my house in the Hollywood Hills and sort of like he was just. Around, and I used to stop him from getting his ass kicked all the time. And stuff
really?
And he just kept practicing and kept playing his bass and kept practicing playing his bass and just kept better and better. And it's like now you guys are rocking the big shows in Flock of Seagulls, man.
We've got a handful of good gigs, man. It's been a fun run. For people that don't know, Stevie and I are talking about his cousin Pondo, Patrick Villapando, bass player for a Flock of Seagulls. And when we first started gigging together, I've known Pondo for probably 25 years. I was doing Animotion before that and a bunch of those other bands. And I remember hanging with him backstage once when he talked about his cousin, Stevie Salas. Wait a minute. Are you kidding me, dude? So, yeah, I mean, I was familiar with Colorcode, of course, and I knew stuff that you had done with Dave Aberzees, of course, which is something we've talked about on the show. But he started listing the people that you had played with. And then I had an opportunity to go back and look at the pedigree. More mutual friends, Eddie Martinez and I started playing together. And Eddie started talking about, oh, yeah, of course, Stevie. So maybe tell me a little bit about how you know Eddie, because this is a funny connection.
Well, you wouldn't know me if it wasn't for Eddie. So yeah. Eddie Martinez, for those who don't know, when I was a kid in mid 80s to late 80s, Eddie Martinez was the #1 New York City session guitar player. He was playing, he was playing with everybody. He was one of those kind of guys that really is where I come from. He could play with Blondie. He'd be on tour with Blondie, but then he was playing with like Sister Sledge or could play with anybody, and then he was doing Run DMC. And he was one of those old school kind of guitar players, but all of us used to have to be, like I'd be in a studio with George Clinton, and then Thomas Dolby would come in, so I started playing with Thomas. And now you guys are, Pondo, I hear you guys running into Thomas Dolby out on the road, and
We
all the
do,
different
yeah.
guys you guys from ABC, and a lot of those guys I was around, because in the late 80s, I was going to London, right before I made it big, and got that big Rod Stewart gig, but I was starting to get flown to England a lot and playing sessions, and a lot of it, all then was those 80s guys, Tears for Fears, and Adam and the Ants, and I remember Marco Peroni taking me to his house, and he had this house that was like a James Bond spy. It was like crazy with doors that were all weird sideways, and so I was around a lot of those 80s guys, but I was never quite an 80s guy, but I could fit in, and then the first gig I got before I got to meet Eddie was Andy Taylor from Duran Duran, and Andy and Eddie had a rub, because Andy got all the credit for Addicted to Love, the Robert Palmer song, but really it was Eddie that played most of the guitar. Matter of fact,
right.
I think Eddie played the solo, and everyone thinks Andy played the solo, and it used to piss Eddie off. And
I'll bet, yeah.
So then that's the first guy that hired me was Andy Taylor when he quit Duran Duran, but then Andy fired me. But then I toured with Duran Duran in '93, later on for the wedding album, when Warren Cucurullo was the guitar player, who I knew from Missing Persons. So
right.
All this stuff about Eddie Martinez was a guy that I wanted to be like. He's a guy of color. He was playing with all the coolest people. I mean, he was playing with Jagger at Live Aid. I ended up playing with Jagger.
Right.
I followed his footsteps a lot. He was a Hamer guitar endorser. I became a Hamer guitar endorser. But the real reason that you know me is because when I was producing that band, the Pandoras, I know you love the Pandoras, I think, right?
Yeah.
87, 88. One of the girls, Rita, worked at EMI Records, and one day she calls me because Robert Palmer was on EMI, or was on Island, or something. He switched to EMI, and she goes, "Your hero Eddie Martinez is in the office." And I'm like, "No way," because Eddie was doing these rap rock records, and I was doing rap rock records in '87 in LA, and scoring films like Action Jackson and Big Shot.
You scored Action Jackson?
I did. I'm sorry, I didn't score Action. I scored Bill and Ted, but at the same time, I did on Action Jackson. I did a big track for it, and because David Kirschenbaum was my boss, I was a staff producer for David Kirschenbaum, and David would say, "Hey, do you know anything about rap music? They called it rap music back then." And I said, "Yeah," but I really didn't. All I really knew was Run DMC and Eddie Martinez, and maybe Eric B. and Rakim, and some of these late '80s things that I was really into. And later on, I would end up playing on Public Enemy too. So it's like, I kind of fell into this stuff. But Eddie Martinez was doing that, Run DMC stuff, and it just rocked, right? Big drum beats and rock. It was like Led Zeppelin beats with rock.
Right.
So in LA, people started going, "You're like the LA Eddie Martinez." And then Bootsy Collins got signed, and I was going to do Bootsy's album because Bootsy was sort of nurturing me from 1985 when I met him when I was playing with George Clinton. And he went to New York, and I couldn't go. I was supposed to go, but Bill Laswell and them wouldn't fly me over because they had Eddie Martinez playing guitar in New York, and they didn't need me, and I was crushed. But later on, I ended up doing it, so me and Eddie are together on the record. But so me and Eddie had these cross. So then Rod Stewart, I get fired from Andy Taylor right before the Psychedelic Furs tour starts, and I'm crushed. I go to San Francisco, and I start producing the tubes for Columbia. And I'm still just a kid, regardless. In 1987, I'm just like nobody still, just a kind of a dumbass kid.
You mind me interrupting some of these things? And like, how do you just get a gig producing the tubes when you're just a kid?
Well, what happened was in LA back in those days, sorry, I'm peeling. I just was yachting in the Sea of Cortez with my race car driver buddy, Jimmy Vassar. And I'm all sunburned right now. It's all peeling. So if you see skin falling off me, that's what's going on. I don't have leprosy.
First world problems, man.
Yeah, exactly. So what happened was, I became a staff producer for David Kirschenbaum. And in LA back then, all the A&R guys would go out every night. All the songwriters would be out. All the artists trying to get deals. You'd all be out, and you had to know where to go and what night of the week. And for some reason, all these A&R guys just thought I was maybe going to be the future. They all knew I had something that was different. And they all befriended me. And I would go out with these guys, and I would meet people. And Jamie Cohen, who's now rest in peace, gone, but he was an incredible A&R guy for Columbia. He wanted to do a new Tubes record, and they needed some fresh young blood. I was a producer, and I'd been producing all this stuff. And I might have already did Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure at that time, but it hadn't come out yet. And the Pandora.
So the name was there.
I produced a band called Was Not Was, co-produced them with Don, which was like a weirdo band at the time. Just happened to go get a #1 record with that song, Walk the Dinosaur. I mean, it was like a fluke, right? You can't plan that. Who the hell, in 1987, you have Bon Jovi, you got Motley Crue, you got all these bad 80s metal bands, you know, like Tease 'Em and Please 'Em and all this bullshit. But you also got some of these great metal bands, right? And the one thing you don't have is a band with 2 old Jewish guys in the band and 2 black lead singers that are in their 40s. And that was so, you know, Don wanted to ask me to come play guitar on a record because I met him through Bootsy Collins. So I needed a job, and of course I said yes. And I ended up doing that What Up Dog album, playing guitar on a bunch of the tracks. And then it was time to do videos, and I put the band together for the videos that you see on MTV all the time now with Walk the Dinosaur and Spy in the House of Love. So it was me and Winston A. Watson Jr., who became the Colorcode drummer, then Bob Dylan's drummer. Carla Azar, who was the drummer for Wendy and Lisa and Waterboys, and Jack, what's his name recently? You know, White Stripes.
Jack White.
Jack White. I was going to say Jack White.
Yeah.
Jack White. You know, she was the girl drummer in that thing when he had that all-girl band. But Carla was a percussion. We made her play percussion, which she hated because she really was a drummer. But she looked cool. And then I had the great Aunt Fiddler on keyboards, who unfortunately just passed away, who's, you know, from Funkadelic, who took Bernie Worrell's place. So that weird band made these videos. The videos go to #1. Don asked me to co-produce Outcome the Freaks, you know, and so, you know, for somehow I'm like a producer now, right? I'm still really young. So Jamie Cohen wants to sign the Tubes, and he just said, you want to try? And I'm like, yeah. So I went to San Francisco, and I got to record the great Prairie Prince, who you should interview.
Oh my God. I did. I had on the show.
Okay. Prairie was the only drummer. I would track live with most of the bands I produce. I track live in the studio to try to find that feel of my right hand and their hi-hat hand, right? To get that, get that thing moving, get it so it feels right. And Prairie Prince, I never could hear the click track, not one time. He was so on it. He was just so on the click. You just never heard the click. And it was the most unbelievable thing ever. But that's how I ended up producing the Tubes. And the tracks never came out because Steve Waybill wasn't in the band. The singing wasn't great. And that was that. But the tracks were really good, and the songs were good. They just were missing Fee. They really needed Fee Waybill.
Yeah, him, and he's the magic sauce for that band for sure. Yeah. Although, I mean, I'm totally with you, man. Prairie Prince is, I feel like, one of the most underrated drummers in the business. You know, guys that know, they know, right? I mean, people know, but as far as like household names go, not enough people know Prairie Prince. But
because he's got no ego, man. He'd rather sit in a room and, you know, he's like a painter. He's like a true artist.
Right. Yeah.
He's so badass. I mean, he's just like Prairie Prince, like in the 70s. I mean, when I was a kid, in the early 80s, you heard the name Prairie Prince, and it was like, he was talked about like he was in the gods category. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, Rundgren knows, right? He's got Rundgren's got him out there. But all right, so you do that Tubes record.
Todd Rundgren yelled at me at those sessions, by the way.
Really? Yeah.
Do you know Todd Rundgren?
I did not met him, but I've heard the reputation.
Well,
but we got to get back to we got to get back to the Tubes thing real quick, because you're going to tell me how you got the what happened with Rod and how we got to know your household name.
This is the Todd Rundgren things about the Tubes. So I'm the stupid kid producing the Tubes. I'm in San Francisco in the studio, and in walks Todd Rundgren, because he had just been produced the Love Bomb, the album before that, and he came in and he was just vibing me out bad. He sat right behind me in the studio, and he was dead quiet and had stone face. And I'm like, this is Todd Rundgren. I mean, come on. I'm a kid. I'm a fan, right? Todd Rundgren.
Yeah.
Since I was almost in diapers. So he was just a dick to me, just a total asshole. And then he split, and I was thinking to myself, fuck that guy. I hate that guy. So come to, I don't know, 1993, 92, I go to the Greek Theater. I walk to the side. I'm backstage at Ringo Starr. Okay. And there's Don Was. Hey, Don. And Don gives me a big hug. Hey, do you know Todd Rundgren?
Uh-oh. Yeah.
Like, now he knew my name. He's like, Stevie. Hey. Gave me a bro shake and all this shit.
Yeah.
And I had to do it. I go, actually, you know, we've met before. He goes, uh-oh. Like that. He's like, oh. Like, he had that look. Like, and I go, yeah, you're a total dick to me. I was the guy producing the Tubes. He goes, I'm so sorry. He goes, I remember that. He goes, I I was so pissed off, and I was feeling all old, and you were like this little kid, and I feel like I'm useless and I'm irrelevant, and you were sitting there, and I remember feeling so mad and angry. He goes, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And I
Wow.
gave him a big hug, and now I love Todd
Cool.
Rundgren.
He owned it,
Love
man.
Todd.
That's so, dude. You know what, man? Accountability goes a long way, right? In this business, for sure, man. Because when people are younger, I used to get really upset when I'd meet people that were kind of idols, in the
Yeah.
business, and you never knew what happened to them earlier that day or that week. You didn't know what's going on in their family, and I just expected them to be as gregarious and excited to meet me as I was them, and so,
Or just not
I,
be a jerk. You don't have to be a
yeah,
jerk. But when you
well,
apologize for it, and he really, when he hugged me, I could tell. And I was like, I love this guy now because he was man enough. He didn't try to act like, like that
right.
thing going around right now with Eddie Vedder and the kicker of the Chiefs. He called him a
Oh
pussy,
yeah,
but he called him a pussy online. Like, that's pussy. Like, I
yeah.
like Eddie, and Eddie has the right to say what he said. But if you're going to use fighting words, I'm old school, man. You should say that shit to a guy's face. You put it online and you act like you're all badass. I hate that kind of shit.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah,
said,
man.
he could say what he wanted to say, but when you use fighting words, call a guy a pussy, you should do that shit to a guy's face. So
You know what? I mean, we bring up Vetter, because our mutual friend Dave, right?
yeah,
When Dave and I first got to know each other, man, he really took me under his wing and was so gracious to me and brought me into a lot of opportunities to see an environment that I wasn't familiar with. Like going in and he's tracking for verses, and I got to check out his demo stuff and even the first gig that I met Dave on, they had just changed the band name from Mookie Blaylock to Pearl Jam. They
oh
were
wow,
brand new, and Dave was
wow,
brand new in the band.
yeah,
And then Vetter had an attitude that I didn't feel like was supportive of the fans, because that band has more traveling fans than almost anybody else out there. It's crazy to see if that band will play an arena in wherever, man, like, in Romania, they'll have 10,000 people that will travel across the world to go see them, and when Dave brought me down to Boulder, Colorado to see them, and I was there day of show. We're hanging in the hotel that they were staying in and down at the bar, and he goes, "Damn it, man. Eddie just canceled the show." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" He said, "Yeah, it was the Ticketmaster thing back in the day when Pearl
right,
Jam said, 'Nope, we're not going to do any shows with Ticketmaster.'" Apparently, that venue had sold the tickets, the rights to sell the tickets through Ticketmaster. He found out day of show and canceled. But it was an outdoor amphitheater show that had like 20,000 people.
Fiddler
20,000 people that traveled to.
Fiddler's Green,
No, it was in Boulder, actually. Like,
oh, Boulder,
I was like, how the hell can you do that to fans day of show? If you've got principles, you go after Ticketmaster afterward, but you don't like screw the fans over day of show. So
yeah.
anyway, I feel like, Aberzees is
Well,
justified and being pissed at Veteran. But anyway, that's not
I
for our
got
story.
I got no beef with it with Eddie Vedder. I just think that if you're going to call a guy a pussy, you should do it to his face. I mean, that's the way I was brought up. And when I grew up, and I made it way earlier than Eddie did, but Eddie made it way bigger, obviously. But I remember
Yeah.
Eddie used to work at Bacchanal Club, where I'm from San Diego, and my band would play
Yep.
there. And I'm sure if I saw Eddie, I was probably nice to him back then, because I really like crew guys, man. I'm really thinking the crew guys would make everything happen. But if you're gonna call it, me and my friends was like, Bernard Fowler, he would never call someone a pussy online. He'd look right in
Totally.
the face. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
that's just the way we were all brought up. Me and Eddie Martinez and all those
Yeah.
kind of guys, man.
You're right.
We used to do sessions in New York. I'm talking about. I'm a stupid little
Yeah.
kid. I'm doing sessions in New York with these legends. You play something bad, and they would just laugh in your face.
Yeah.
They're not like now. We're like, oh, everything's good in its own special way. They're just like, the fuck? Like, what the fuck are you
Nope.
calling that? What the fuck are you doing? That's bullshit. What are you doing? And you're just like, what?
Nope.
Yeah, so, people don't mess around back there in New York. It's like,
Right.
I'd never
You know
call
what,
Chuck
man?
D. I would never call Chuck D a pussy online.
No, I would think not. I wouldn't probably call Chuck D a pussy to his face either. But Eddie Martinez, man, just to just put a feather in that cap, dude. The thing that I love most about him, aside from his playing, he's one of the most decent human beings I know. I really feel like that. I saw him on the airplane last week going to New York. We had a show in Long Island. He was going and he said, "Yeah, I got this gig with Liberty DeVito and Carmine Rojas, and I'm like, Of course you do. Of course you do. Yeah.
Yeah,
And he's always dressed in a suit, man. He's just dressed to the nines, but
yeah.
he's such a good human being. And I'm glad you guys were able to sort of follow in the ranks together.
Didn't tell you. I
But
mean, I never finished that up. How come you
yeah, let's
know?
hear it.
I went to audition for Rod Stewart. Eddie was the guitar player. Tony Thompson was the drummer. Carmine
Oh my
Rojas was the
God.
bass player. And it was my dream band because I was a huge fan of the Power Station and David Bowie. I'm a David Bowie fanatic, right? And there's Carmine's
Yeah.
posters on my wall. Eddie Martinez is a god.
Yeah.
Tony Thompson's my favorite drummer in the world. I go
Rest
play
in
with
peace.
him, and we groove so heavy that Rod's just so into it that they say I get the gig. Turns out they realize that I played too much like Eddie Martinez. I couldn't play acoustic guitar well. I didn't know how to play slide, and they already had Eddie Martinez, so they told me now you don't have the gig. So I had called and called and called. Hey, if you guys ever need me or whatever, and nobody ever returned my call. But what happened was I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but about 2 weeks before the tour left, Tony Thompson left the band. Tony Brock came back from the Babies, and then Eddie said, I quit. I'm going back to Robert Palmer. So Eddie left back to Robert Palmer, and that left a big space open for me. So I got a call back, and I came back in. And because Eddie left the Robert Palmer, I got the Rod Stewart gig. And God only knows if anybody would even know me to this day if it wasn't for that. Because that gig put me in another stratosphere that kind of give you a lifelong career when you get a couple of those kind of gigs,
Totally. I mean,
So Eddie Martinez, I owe Eddie Martinez everything.
Well, next time you see him, man, give him a hug for me.
You
We're due for lunch, that guy and I. But looking back through the discography stuff, because you had your Lifetime Achievement Award this month in San Diego. So you're from Carlsbad originally, right, or Oceanside?
Well, I was born in Oceanside, and then when I bought my first, made my first real money was in '88 with Rod Stewart, and that same year I signed a really big recording contract with Island and a giant publishing deal. So I bought a house in Del Mar, and then I bought a second one that same year, later that year in Carlsbad. And Carlsbad really became my home for the largest part of my life. But I really was born in Oceanside.
And the reflection on your lifetime was done at Humphreys, which is one of my favorite venues, man. Just such a beautiful place too, right?
Cool.
So
Cool.
tell me about that, man. Tell me kind of what went into that. And I tried to find like sort of an archive of your presentation or you're receiving the award online. I didn't find anything out there,
Oh,
but
there's so much of it. There's so many
I saw
things.
pictures.
Tons. But they for some reason everyone liked my speech, and they played my speech every day on 91X radio station every morning on the morning show for like the whole week. They played my speech. People were calling, they're playing that fucking speech again. But you know what was great about it was I got a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Native American Music Awards in New York in like 2009 or 2010, and I had Dave Abbruzzese come and play with me with TM Stevens because we were in Europe.
Okay.
Came in and played that. But this was a special one for me because my son got to fly out, and my son, we have a house here in Austin, Texas, and he just doesn't know that much about who I used to be. He wasn't born, and it was pretty cool to have him there. And then the other thing that was really cool was I had a lot of rock star power there because Matt Sorum came down and played with me, and he presented the award to me. And then Sammy Hagar, Rick Nielsen from Cheap Trick, and Richie Kotzen, and who was the last one? Oh, and Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top. All sent in homemade videos congratulating me that went into the video presentation. And I don't think anyone in San Diego ever had like real rock stars present them and do that. And it made me feel great because I wanted San Diego to know that I did a lot of shit on a whole nother level, in the 90s, but there was no internet, so most people didn't know, right?
Right. That's the thing, man. Like a lot of Eddie is another example. You look through like your discography, and a lot of your stuff sort of gets overshadowed because there was another name sort of attached to the performer. Yeah. When I listen to you in Rumble, and we'll get to the movie in a little bit, there's a part at the end of the movie that they interview you in your film, and you talk about sort of having your voice, but being able to maybe promote somebody else's voice with your talents. And I'm paraphrasing, but I thought it was really cool because there's a humility to that, right? It's like letting somebody else shine, but helping their light shine brighter. with your
Yeah.
talents, and that's a lot of what I've seen from you, man. I mean, you look through all the stuff that you've done, like, hopefully you're getting points on this stuff,
I mean, I do
but
all right. I do all right.
yeah,
I mean,
Wh-
I
um,
just think that like even I think that if you're secure with who you are, I mean, nobody. If you ever really look at my resume, it looks like a big lie. I mean, Bill and Ted, my
yeah,
con, Bill and Ted, all the way to number ones was not was Duran Duran, Terrence Trent D'Arby, who's now synonymous with Ted.
that's
Michael Hutchins
right.
Excess played his last gig with me before he died. It's like, I mean, I've been around some gigantic things. Mick Jagger
Yeah,
and Keith Richards and Ronnie Wood playing on my records, and it's like you don't have to pretend, and you can let that shit do the talking, and being Mick
yeah,
Jagger's music director, or, it was like, I want to see everybody do good, and I said this in my speech in San Diego, I like to be the dumbest guy in the room, because if I
yeah,
am, and these guys are huge around me, people are going to go, who the hell is that guy? Like, well,
yeah,
how come he's in that room? You know what I mean? And
right.
I like that a lot. Um, it
And
just
your
works out for me.
kid
As long as I
getting to
get
see
paid,
that,
I do okay, and I'm good.
as long as you get paid. There was somebody else that, doing a little bit more research about Stevie Salas, somebody that you gave his first break to, and another sort of posthumous thing to reflect on. One of my favorite drummers, of course, man. There's a quote on your site. Stevie Salas gave me my first break. He busted my ass, but he showed me that music isn't about perfection. It's about feeling. You remember who that is, man?
Taylor Hawkins, yeah. Taylor
Taylor
Hawkins.
Hawkins. Yeah.
Taylor Hawkins is like
So,
my little brother.
yeah, he lived with you guys, right, for a while. Is that right?
Well, he really didn't live with me. What happened was, it's funny, real quick, because my friend is Deb Holland, who is the Native American Secretary of the Interior for the United States of America. And she sent me a photo the other night with Dave. I'm with Dave Grohl. He says to tell you hi, and they sent this selfie
Oh,
at some event in Washington D.C. And I told her back, tell Dave I'm pissed. They never asked me to come play any of those Taylor events because I should be playing those.
you should be.
It's like a
Yeah.
lot of those guys that play on those events suck, and they don't even know Taylor, or they did kind of. But
Right.
I mean, I knew Taylor literally. Like I even had to yell at Taylor one time to go to the dentist because he had these cavities, and I go, "You got money now? Go get your teeth fixed," stuff
Oh
like
my
that.
God.
I found Taylor playing in the Club Lingerie in Hollywood, in this tiny little Club Lingerie. It's a famous little spot in Hollywood. I don't think it's there anymore. And I was looking for a drummer for Sash Jordan because I was producing Sash Jordan, the Rats album for Sash Jordan. And Brian Tishy was the drummer, but
That's
Brian was
right.
joining Zach Wild Pride and Glory when he left Ozzy, and I needed a drummer. And I had heard about Taylor, and I worked him out in my Bombshell. I know you've heard about the old famous Bombshell,
Yeah.
me and Pondo's house out in Hollywood Hills. And he really wasn't prepared, but he had so much God-given natural talent. He had stuff that I couldn't teach him. Everything else I could teach him, but I was pretty mean to him. There's an article I think in a British magazine. If you Google Taylor Hawkins and what's the movie about the drummer where the teacher's so mean to him and he throws shit at
A
him?
whiplash.
Okay, so it's an article. Google Taylor Hawkins and Whiplash. There's a great article where he talks about. I actually had a guy like that, Stevie Salas, and in England
Oh
I'm
my
much more
God.
well known. I think but he talked about how I was so gnarly to him, but he said it was like he needed that. Like
Mm.
he you know his son writes me now, Shane, and says my dad
Yeah.
worshipped you and you taught him, you kicked his ass and taught him what every drummer needs to know. I mean, it was like Shane was telling me this stuff on a text just 6 months ago. So I was tough
That's
on
cool.
Taylor, but obviously it worked because he became one of the most famous
Yeah.
drummers in the world.
Right. You know, I've had conversations with so many drummers after he passed. Pondo and I, we were over in the UK touring when Taylor passed, and yeah, I've been a big fan of his for sure. At least since the Alanis Morissette days. And there's a guy that I knew in the business that just came. He sort of dipped for about 10 years and just came around about the time that Josh Freese got the gig. And he's like, man, I've been reading about this dude, this no name guy that just joined Foo Fighters. How do I get a gig like that? And I said, are you talking about Josh Freese? And he said, yeah, I guess that's his name, but apparently he's got like horrible meter problems, and all the fanzines are all talking about what a crappy drummer he is. And I said, well, all of the fans love Taylor Hawkins like family. I mean, he had that infectious thing, right? That everybody loved him without even knowing him, right? And then Josh Freese is one of the most incredible drummers on the planet. He's the perfect guy for the gig. And he has no problem with meter, dude. I mean, he's, if you listen to anything he's done with Nine Inch Nails or Perfect Circle, but this guy obviously didn't know. And he had a chip on his shoulder. And he just assumed that you can just go into like a cattle call and walk in and replace Taylor Hawkins and Foo Fighters and make out all right. I told him,
dream, right? That's the dream. I got to do that.
There's only one person.
But
there's one person that needs to be happy.
Yeah, that's here's the thing about Josh Freese. So Pondo used to have this band when he was going to GIT or whatever it was, and he had the Japanese drummer, and they used to practice in I had this bomb shelter in the backyard of my Hollywood Hills house, and he had this drum set back there. And Josh Freese was 19, 20 years old. He used to call me and used to come over to my house because I just did a record in New York with Buddy Miles playing drums and Bootsy Collins on bass. It was a real learning experience for me because Buddy Miles would sing the drum parts. He wouldn't just play, here's the verse, here's the chorus. It wasn't that. He was singing that. I went down to the back, take it down. It was incredible. And Josh Freese wanted to know about it. And he'd come to my house and work out. So I'd go into these band of gypsy groups with him. And he couldn't play them. I mean, he may say he could, but he could not play them. He was boom, 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 bam. He couldn't swing the kick and without dragging, right?
Sure.
And he used to come to and get frustrated and pissed off and work out. And Josh used to work really hard. So then I'd run into him in New York. He was playing with the singer of the Replacements when he went solo. I'm blanking on his name, Paul Westerberg. And I see Josh, and he told me about his girlfriend he met in Bimini, and she worked on a film. She was a wardrobe, and he married her. Then years later, I went and got asked to go play with Guns N' Roses when it was not really Guns N' Roses, but Josh was the drummer, and we jammed, and we had a good hangout that night, and talked a lot. But Josh has got one of those things where Taylor Hawkins doesn't have. Josh is a super disciplined drummer. That's why he can play Devo, and he can do all that shit. But the most disciplined guys don't have the personality. Taylor Hawkins, John Bonham, Dave Grohl, they have these personalities. I hate to say this about Josh Freese, but he doesn't have that much of a drummer's personality because he's got so many drummers. I'm this guy. I can do it all. I can play perfect for Sting, and it's super fucking boring because he's not Stuart Copeland. You know what I mean? Well, Taylor Hawkins can't do that. Taylor Hawkins can be Taylor Hawkins, and Josh Freese can be anybody. So when Josh plays with the Foos, when it first started, I saw everybody bitching and moaning and complaining on the site. And I kind of wrote on it. I said, listen, man, Taylor pushes and pulls and breathes a song. Josh is playing it like a pro. Yeah. But it lacks a bit of personality. But you never have to worry that he's going to drop the ball and fuck up, right? It's like he's there. Right. And maybe that's a great thing for Dave Grohl. He doesn't need a wild card. You know what I mean?
But Dave is enough, I would think, man. He's that guy. He's such a sort of a Taylor Hawkins style of player.
He's the best.
Yeah. So I think, he could probably, I'm sure he pulls Josh where he needs to go, when they're doing that live.
Hopefully Josh, because Josh has the ability to stretch out. But once you become so disciplined in life, it's hard to even know you're not stretching out. You just think you're stretching out.
Sure.
But you're not, because sometimes you got to push, man. You got to push that fucking hat, and then you got to lay it back in. You can't just be a machine, and the great songs aren't machine-like, and so that's true. Like Taylor used to call me up early days, maybe right after Learning to Fly or whatever. Not Learning to Fly, it's Tom Petty, but whatever that record was, when he was like a trio, and Taylor would be all depressed, and he'd be like, do you know how awful it feels? I'm in there struggling, and I'm doing 20 takes, and I know Grohl could just sit down and do it in one take. You know how awful that makes me feel? And I'm like going, dude, stop. The guy has got to be so cool. He's got to be the coolest guy in the world, not to blow you out and to let you do that and to give you that. And I go, just be happy about that. But he was always, that's why if you ever notice Taylor Hawkins never stopped working hard, never stopped pushing himself. I always felt like he sucked, always. He never, I said this a lot when he passed away. Taylor still felt like he wasn't worthy, and that caused him to just be the best he could be every night. And that probably, that kind of pressure, will eat you alive after a while. Yeah. He never just sat down and said, okay, I'm fucking great.
It's unfortunate, man. I mean, it was certainly a loss. Like you in this business, we've lost a lot of people way too early, of course, man. And somebody that's still around. I'm looking at the chat here. Somebody who's still around, who's got this incredible voice still to this day. Rob McLean's asking how it was to work with Glenn Hughes. That personality wise, but also, dude, a guy that is still relevant, and he was doing the Daisies for a bit, right, with Tishy,
Yeah,
and
I did that gig. I think they just paid him a ton of dough or something to do that gig.
yeah, right, yeah,
Glenn Hughes though. Okay, another six degrees of Stevie Salas.
yeah.
I'm not ready. I do Colorcode, and I start writing my next Colorcode record, and I'm not ready to record it yet. And I have to deliver a record, so I deliver this kind of bootleg live album, and I'm still not done, and I'm still having to get delivered another record to the label. So I did an album of covers called The Electric Powwow, and because I was still writing the second Colorcode album, which was called Back from the Living. It took me 4 years to make that record, but in between, I made a lot of records because I had to deliver records, and I was also doing a lot of other people's records and other tours. So I am doing this album of cover tunes of songs that influenced my guitar playing, David Bowie and Stevie Wonder and Bo Diddley and all this kind of stuff. And Sass Jordan says, you need to get Glenn Hughes to sing that Stevie Wonder song. And I'm like, Glenn Hughes? Like Deep Purple Glenn Hughes? Really? Is he around? Because he hadn't been around in a while. He was in rehab, and he just came out of rehab. He was kind of chubby and kind of insecure. And I was working at Ricky Rocket used to have a studio called Rocket Plant with his old Neve in it. And it was great. And I did a ton of recordings there. And so she gave me his number, and I called him, and he says, yeah, I'll come down. And I didn't know that Hughes Thrall, he played with Pat Thrall, the greatest guitar player ever. And they were already doing funk rock. I didn't even know because I thought I was like super into funk rock. And he comes down, and I do Stevie Wonder's song called I Was Made to Love Her, which you can still find online everywhere. And he fucking just crushed it. I mean, he sounded like Stevie Wonder on his best day. And then I had a girl from that Nasty Habits, the Motley Crue's background singers, Donna.
Yeah.
The girl from Guns N' Roses, the background singer. My brain just went blank right now. She's the black girl, super amazing. I'm blanking out right now. She came in and they did the backgrounds. And Glenn Hughes sang, I was born in the world. And it is just magic. And to this day, I think most people, that's one of their favorite songs I ever did probably was because Glenn Hughes sang it. So then years later, I started writing songs with Glenn, and I wrote and produced a bunch of songs, a song called You Kill Me, and a couple other ones that we just wrote that were Zeppelin-y, because me and him and Storm were going to be a trio, and we were going to go play in Brazil, Monsters of Rock, and we just didn't do it. But he used those tracks on those records. And to this day, Glenn is still, I love Glenn Hughes. He's a dear friend and a wonderful human being.
I love that he at his age, he's still got that range. It's amazing to me. I mean, a lot of the guys, when you get older, right, and your voice drops and that muscle, loosens up, that guy can still hit those notes. It's crazy. Rob's asking.
With Sammy Hagar, I love Sammy because Sammy did an incredible Lifetime Achievement Award too. I just love Sammy, and I love playing with Sammy. But we were playing recently, we were tuning a whole step down.
Yeah.
Sammy's still, he's almost 80, and Sammy got that tone still. But, we're tuned down a whole step.
It happens, man. I mean, he's in his 70s, bro. If you think about those old Montrose days, he's been around a long time. Yeah, that's crazy.
He was 22 when he did that first Montrose album.
Caleb Rankin, my kid, he's joining the show from Thailand right now. My son, he just picked up and moved to Thailand about a month ago. He just said, you know what, time to just explore the rest of the world and
see the world, man.
Yeah, I'm glad to see you. It's early there. He's up and up with the sunrise. Rob's asking if Zach was on that Glenn Hughes record. Is Zach Wilde? Was he on that?
Zach wasn't on the Glenn Hughes record. Zach was on my Electric Powwow album.
Oh, that's what I meant. Yep.
Yeah, Zach came and jammed on it. Cheap Trick. I was knowing Zach for a long time.
Yeah.
And me and Zach, Richie Kotzen, a bunch of us guys were like these young guys that were hot shots in the early 90s. We all had record deals, and we all go everywhere around the world together, and we were all friends. And like me and Zach were shooting the cover of a guitar magazine once, and we were all freaking out of our minds. And it was like, I have these photos of me and Zach just so stupid. And still when I see Zach, it's like, But I knew Zach before he did that, but I didn't really know how great he was. What happened was
Yeah.
I knew he was great because I mean the Aussie and all that madness. But he came in the studio to play an electric powwow, and he was running late, and he had to get to the airport. And Barbara and his wife was with him, and she's like, "We got to hurry up. We got 30 minutes. Stop by." And he sits down at NRG Studios, and he plays a solo to this Rick Derringer song I love called "Teenage Love Affair," and it was like the most amazing solo in one take I've ever seen. Like, and it was like 16 bars. It wasn't just a short one. I mean, it was
Yeah.
just like, Jesus.
Right.
It was incredible. And I go, "Man, you better get going." He goes, "No, no, 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 no. I got to double it." And I'm thinking, "You're going
Oh
to
my
double
God.
that one-time solo that you just improvised? You're going to be here for another hour, I think." I go, you don't have enough time." He goes, "No, no, no, let me go. Because, Zach's just like this energy madness. And
Yeah.
he fucking doubled it in one take. Perfect.
Oh my God. That is
And I just thought to
awesome.
myself, man, that to me was the most incredible thing as a musician that I had witnessed. One of the most incredible things. And I knew then that Zach was just on a whole nother level
And
than all the rest
didn't
of
get
us.
to shine. I mean, most of the Aussie stuff, he kind of gets painted as a one-trick pony guy, but that
Yeah.
was,
Well,
that was not
once he
his
did the
thing.
squeal on No More Tears, you kind of got married to that squeal a lot.
Right. Yeah. But you always know that's his
Yeah.
signature sound now. I mean, it's like
Yeah,
Randy, right?
but Tim Palmer was, he's my neighbor in Austin, and Tim was mixing the Stevie Salas record. And I've known Tim forever. He mixed Pearl Jam 10. So Tim, and he produced, Bowie, and so Tim, so Tim produced an Ozzy record after that, or one or two after that. And he said he wrote this song with this riff, but Zach kept putting that squeal in the riff, and he kept saying, "You can't do the squeal anymore." And it was really, they were just rubbing because Tim did not want that squeal on this record, and Zach just couldn't. Ooh, ooh, ooh. He just kept doing that harmonic pinch, that pinch harmonic, and it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it, man. It's like, well, speaking of signature sounds and guitars, man, I was going to bring up a couple of your guitars. You mentioned before the show that some of these you might not still play, but I found a couple of guitars on your site that I love. Of
Yeah.
course, you've got this guy. This is, as far as color goes, that's one of the most beautiful guitars. What is that guitar, bro?
That's a guitar I designed with Marcus Spangler at Warwick Guitars in the German custom shop in East Berlin, or East Germany. I'm sorry, it's not East Germany anymore now. But I went over to frame this. Hans Peter was building these beautiful guitars, but they weren't getting any traction. And I said, "Let me come over and design a guitar." And he goes, "Would you?" And so I flew to Germany, and we designed this guitar. I wanted a guitar that sort of fit my punk rock sort of feel, but also
Yeah.
a rocker could play, a metal guy could play, and even a jazz guy could play. But it still, for me, had a bit of that surf, a little bit of an alternative punk rock look to it, like a Mose Ride or something. And we designed this guitar, and it won Guitar of the Year at the NAMM show that year it came out. And and then I brought over Phil X, who was there for a long time, and Phil helped me do my pickup replacement and all kinds of stuff. So, that's a famous Idolmaker. That's my signature series guitar.
The Idolmaker, which is nice that you've got your watch in the frame of that shot too, which Caleb, my kid, is a big watch guy. So I'm sure he'll
Yeah, really? Yeah, that's
he
this one, the Daytona, stainless Daytona. Yeah, I like Daytonas.
there you go, Caleb. That one's for you. All right, this dude.
No,
Tell me
tell
about this
Caleb I
guitar,
got some
man.
better ones than this one.
All right, we'll have a watch show next. What
There you
is
go.
this guitar? This is
Okay,
stunning,
so
man.
when I was young, I used to collect Ovation breadwinners with sabers because I thought they looked cool. So in late '90s, a company called Kapari-san, they were a Japanese company, and I was pretty famous over there. Like, sounds crazy, big in Japan, everyone laughs, whatever, but it was true.
Right.
I was really, I could sell tons of tickets. It was huge. I said, "Make me a guitar that kind of looks like the Ovation," and we designed that, drew it out, and he built that guitar. And that's one of the most amazing sounding guitars I own still to this day. I think there's only 5 of them in the world, and I had 3 of them, and somebody
Right on.
took one of them, and another guy owns it now, but he found it for sale in Guitar Center, and there's a red one that was for sale in Europe that I should have bought off the guy, but I didn't because I like these. These are amazing guitars. That's an amazing sounding guitar. It's called Kapari-san guitar that I designed.
Nice. Right on. And then
Yeah,
this
that guitar
guy.
was actually in the Smithsonian, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my Kapari-san was, yeah.
No kidding. And this guy, man, this is a stunner. I love that.
Yeah, this is a DBZ. The guy. What were those guitars? The DBZ, Dean B. Zielinski. He was the original guy that built the original Dean guitars that you saw in the late '80s, the '80s, that
Yeah.
like guitars, and like Dimebag Darrell played one, and so he
Yeah.
went out and designed some other guitars, and this is Dean B. Zielinski's. They're Dean guitars. This is his own personal brand. He made me a bunch of cool ones. This one, my business manager Deb Boylan, who handles my whole world, her boyfriend has this guitar because he looks so cool with it. So he's got it now. But yeah, that's one of my old DBZs. That's pretty badass.
It's a beautiful guitar, man.
Great guitar. Great guitar.
In the chat, and so Rob, I think Rob McLean must have gotten here late. He's asking about Mick Jagger and Rod Stewart. We can get to those, but you know what, man? This is really important. I need to ask you about Rumble.
Yeah.
When we talked last time and the movie had been out, you can see it on Amazon Prime. It is one of the best rock documentaries I've ever seen. The fact that it's the first rock documentary I've ever seen about Native Americans and the contributions that they made to rock and roll. That's what it's all about. How did that come about? Yeah, I mean, like, how did this come to be? Did you sort of start the script writing, or where did this come from?
What happened was, I was kind of coming to the end of my career, which I thought in 2000. I was ready to retire in 2000. I was just sick of music by that point. Had a lot of loot. I started buying land in Costa Rica, surfing down there. So I was just going to drop out for a while. I was done. And what happened was, I had a bunch of money in the stock market, a ton of dough in the stock market, and the 2000 crash really cracked me. It really wiped me out. I lost a lot of money, like 8, 7 figures. It was ridiculous. Wow. I was like, oh my God, I had to go back to work. I with like a gift from God, got a call from Mick Jagger, and I started working with Mick. And then after that, I got a call from Sass Jordan saying, "Can you come to Canada and put a band together for me? And we're going to open for the Rolling Stones at this giant event." So I said, "Okay." So Sass and me were real tight, And so I flew out.
And you'd already worked with Mick before, right?
Well, I did Jagger and Taylor was no longer with Sass Jordan because that was Taylor's first gig with Sass Jordan, and so and then Alanis Morissette took Taylor and Nick, and I hired Nick for Jagger when I was Jagger's music director. But so I finished this thing. I go to Toronto to put the band together to get ready for this giant Rolling Stone show with like 498,000 people. It was the hugest show ever. Rush was playing us. Oh my God. It was just, Jeff Healey sat in with us. It was a really amazing day. But on my way to there, a Native American writer named Brian Wright McLeod called me, said, "I'm writing a book about everything that's ever been recorded by Native American musicians going all the way back to 1908 in wax cylinders. And I need you in my book." And I'm like, "Of course, I'll come do it." So I met him, and he started telling me about Link Wray, who I knew. And he started telling me about Jesse Ed Davis, who I knew. But what I didn't know is that they were Native Americans. I had no idea. I used to read their names on line notes and see all that shit. I didn't know they were Native Americans. When I played Madison Square Gardens, I thought I was the first Native American to ever play Madison Square Gardens. I didn't know Robbie Robinson was a Native American. I didn't know Jesse Ed Davis had played there with George Harrison. I knew he played it with George Harrison. I just didn't know he was Native American.
Yeah, so, right.
I figured, man, I go, I don't know this. I know most Native musicians and Native Americans don't know it. And I said, I need to do something to give something back. And I want to do something for Native people to show them that they have role models other than people from 150 years ago, Sitting Bull and Geronimo and everybody else. So I decided maybe I need to make a book or something, talk about Randy Castillo and Jesse Ed and all these guys and Link Wray, and that was no good. And then what happened was I told the story to a guy named Tim Johnson, who was the co-director at the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian in Washington, D.C. and New York. And he flipped out. He goes, "Why don't you come here to go to work and let's do an exhibit?" So I took a job at the Smithsonian, dumbass me, barely graduated high school. And I created an exhibit at the Smithsonian called Up Where We Belong, People and Natives in Popular Culture. And it was all about this small group of Native Americans that influenced every rock star we know, just about, in one way or the other, even through osmosis, right? Like, Jesse Ed Davis was Eric Clapton's favorite guitar player. You listen to Eric Clapton, you listen to Jeff Beck, you're listening to Link Wray because Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page, and Jimmy told me this to my face, and so did Jeff. Jeff said to me one day, Me and Jimmy Page, when we were 17, used to jump up and down on my bed at my mom's house with playing air guitar to Link Ray. Like, what?
Wow.
So I create this exhibit. The exhibit does really well in New York and in DC. And after it ran its course, I said I need to make a movie. And so I set about to make a movie. I was living in Canada at the time. And I just made this film called Rumble, which was supposed to be a tiny little film showing achievement. So Native Americans could see they have some role models and make them know that anything in this world is possible. Because a lot of times they feel like the whole world happens, but it's not for them. They don't get to participate. I wanted them to see that these guys, against all odds, did it, so it can be done. And next thing I know, the movie came out, and I got nominated for an Emmy, and I got 3 Canadian Academy Awards, and it was like, and it changed written history in America.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. I can't take claim. I just got lucky.
Well, man, you've mentioned like twice, and actually, no, once here, and then once I was watching a little promo video that you had that looks like a documentary about your life as well, and you talked about being this lucky kid. I talk on this show a lot about luck and difference between that and fortune, because I think, man, there's no way that you'd be where you are right now with just luck, right? I mean, if you hadn't done all the work, right, to prepare yourself, fortune provided an opportunity.
Let me tell you. Hold on. Let me tell you something. Okay. Some guys are shitty auditioners. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a fucking badass auditioner. I can walk into a room. I can't now so much. I've lost a bit of that mojo, but I can walk in a room and just go wham and hit an A chord, and it was like, and I can make the room. I said this in my speech when I got my Lifetime Achievement Award. I never felt my job on the guitar was to play notes. I felt like my job was to move energy. And I could audition in rooms like a motherfucker and get the gigs. Getting into the auditions is always hard. Like your friend, you didn't get an audition for the Foo Fighters. You got to understand that, and that's working the right places and rooms where people see you, being visible and being lucky. But I was a great auditioner, and that's how I got a lot of gigs. So my skill level was great. When I was Terence Trent D'Arby's music director, I was producing Sass Jordan, writing her record, and doing the Electric Powwow album with Zach and with everybody else that was on it. And I would come to Terrence's rehearsals, and I don't know if you remember Terence Trent D'Arby's first 2 albums, but they're not easy to play.
Violator was incredible, man. That was one of my favorites, right?
Vibrator, yeah.
Vibrator, I'm sorry. But that song Vibrator, oh my God. 3 guitars, right?
I did that. I did Read My Lips, I Dig Your Scene. Yeah, I did that shit.
You did those records, wow.
Yeah,
no shit, I didn't.
Yeah. And so I just had lunch with Terence Trent D'Arby in Italy about a month and a half ago, too. I was in Italy and we went and had lunch. It was great to see him. His name's Sananda Maitreya now. He doesn't go by Terence anymore.
That's right. That's how you find him on the streaming split.
To show you how unprepared I was, so you can feel better about anything you do when you go out to play now. I would show up, and I hired a guitar tech named Vince Ruby, who was a really good guitar player. I would tell him what songs we were going to work on that day. He would learn them. I'd get there quick, run into the bathroom, grab a guitar, and I go, how do you play, Wishing, Wish Me Luck, right there. Oh, that's what it is. Yeah, that feels good. That feels right. And I'd go in the room, okay, here we go, guys. Let's work on Wish You Well. And I would I was the boss. I was the music director, and everyone followed me. But I was so unprepared. But my feel was great. And if I used to tell kids this, it's like, you say you're a leader in the army, let's just say, and you're in a battle, okay? And you're sitting there in a foxhole, and you say to all the guys, we're going to run over that hill, and we're going to kick their ass and get them, let's go. And everyone's like, okay? Or do you say, like, we're going to run over that hill, I don't know, we might get the shit shot out of it, and no one's going to follow you. So I would go to rehearsal, rock this shit, and I start fucking rocking, and everyone would just start rocking, and the energy would be so right. I would never go like, I don't really know it so well, guys. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to try, if I screw up, please, I'd say, fuck you, man. Let's go. Let's rock.
Yeah.
And like that is Chad Smith. Chad Smith's like, let's fucking go.
Oh,
he just starts rocking, dude. He just starts rocking.
Hell yeah.
So, think about that next time you go sit down and play with someone. Just go be explosive and let them get caught up in all your madness and energy. And you'd be surprised if they pay attention where you hit that kick drum every time or not,
Yeah. Well, some of the gigs that you've done, man, I mean, you've got that's the bravado, the ringleader. But some of the guys you've worked with are already that personality. So how do you deal with somebody like a Jagger or a Rod Stewart? Rod's a taskmaster. Man, I've seen him
Well,
work his
I
band,
wasn't.
you know?
I wasn't no vibes. I was a fucking pussy with Rod. I was scared shitless. I almost got fired every
Yeah.
week. I wrote a book about it. Yeah. But Rod. But I also was. But I also was out on stage. So on stage, I fucking rocked. If you ever saw that too, I fucking rocked. And a lot of the old school guys with Rod musicians hated me because I used to, I was using super lead Marshalls with like distortion. I wasn't trying
Yeah.
to play. Let's play it all clean and tasty, man. I was fucking
Right.
dive bombing and doing all this shit. But in 1988, that's what he wanted. He needed that
Yeah.
shit. I was way more Steve Stevens than I was Jim Cregan.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so, but with Jagger, I wasn't aggressive with Jagger. But Jagger would call me 5 times a day and, hey, when Nick, he's like, come on, man, he needs to blah, blah, blah. And I'd go, okay, I got you. Let me take care of it. And I would take care of it. And then sometimes he'd be singing something and I could say, if Fowler did that part and you did that part, I think it might sound pretty good. And he was man enough and badass enough to say, oh, let me try it. And sometimes I'd be like,
Wow.
no, I like this. I go, yeah, okay. Or, yeah, it's better. And so Jagger was actually great to work with because he's the king and he's smart enough to have an open mind and listen. But he could tell the difference. And when you're right, that's fucking badass. Thank you. And when you're wrong, it's like, nah. And that's what you really want. That's the dream.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's if only.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know your boss Mike, right? That well. I've only met him a few times. But if you played the shit wrong, would he look at you and say, "What the fuck are you playing?"
Yep.
He seems like the kind of guy that would kick your ass. He seems pretty tough, like a Birmingham bruiser,
Yeah, I mean, he grew up in Liverpool, right? So that's the whole culture that happened there. It's blue collar soccer, like working in the coal mine kind of thing. And but like I worked with Eddie a bunch. One thing that I noticed about Eddie is Eddie's is the perfect sort of well, he came prepared. If I didn't come prepared, and I had some gigs that kicked my ass, I will be honest, man, I was out of my league on some of the stuff that I did with him and with Jennifer
Eddie.
Batten.
Which Eddie?
With Eddie Martinez.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
like we did a gig once in Portland, and freaking Bernard Purdy was up at the bar and didn't know. We did Stratus, the Cobham tune, and he's like, go for the solo, man. And I'm like, man, all right, but with Batten too, I started playing with Jennifer. And she'd been playing with Glenn Sobel, and we played the first gig with like Eric Johnson and John Schofield, the World Guitar Congress. And that's my first, that's my introduction to gigs with Jennifer Batten. So I was, I just had to know, okay, I've got a window and a space and I know where I can hold my own and I'm not going to try to be anybody else. And the good thing was they didn't want me to be, which is very cool, right? I wasn't asked to be somebody out of my league, but I can work with that kind of personality.
Works, right? I mean, the Stratus works because everybody just laid in their spot.
Yeah.
By the fucking thing, it's hypnotic. Cobham's just fucking, you know what I mean? It's like, I mean, Leland Sklar is just playing. Leland Sklar told me that the reason that he got the gig is because he just laid on one thing the whole time. He didn't try to
right.
He just fucking
laid the bed. Yeah.
Right. So what you did was the right thing. Because if you try to do some shit and you ain't really gonna do it, you're only gonna look like a dumbass. But if you lay in that shit and you just lay in that shit and you know it's killing, it's undeniable.
That's right. Don Muchigrosso, you're in the chat here. You asked if he'd ever worked with Eddie Martinez. So I suggest you go back about 15 minutes in this conversation. You're going to hear all sorts of reasons why Stevie Salas and Eddie Martinez are very connected. I want to ask you, man, Rumble. All right. So you talked about how maybe you got lucky by being thrust into the situation where you already had a connection to all these Native American artists. And, I knew about your connection to Randy. Dude, rest in peace. Randy Castillo, one of the most underrated rock drummers on the planet. He would have been on the Mount Rushmore of all these other rock drummers, places had he not passed from cancer.
Oh, yeah.
He was, but dude, well loved
by everybody, too. Everybody.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, because
Shit out.
he was a
Yeah.
humble guy.
Let me tell you why Rumble really worked, though. You know why Rumble worked?
Why's that?
I was saying, as a Native American person, that these musicians influenced everything we know about rock history. You can just lead them all back right down to the Delta blues.
Yeah.
Okay, Link Ray, the invention of the power chord. There's no, is there a Pete Townsend? Is there a Jeff Beck? Taylor Hawkins said that in the film. Would there be a Jeff Beck if it went after Link Ray? Jimmy
Right.
Page. All these guys will tell you they learned when he hit those power chords on Rumble, it was like that. That's the beginning of that's the birth of the power chord, really. And so, what the way to make it work was, I couldn't sit there and say it myself. I couldn't have a musicologist like the great Brian Wright McLeod say that, because then it's a race film. Then it's like, like it's an Indian guy saying this Indian guy was better than these other guys. But
Right.
you had to have Clapton. I was calling Clapton all the time. I was chasing Jeff Beck around, talking to Jeff about it. I needed Steven Tyler. It told me, when we were starting Aerosmith, all we listened to was Jesse Ed Davis and Taj Mahal, and that's what we wanted our band to sound like. And I'm thinking, okay, Aerosmith is arguably the greatest American rock band in history, like the Rolling Stones are the
Right.
Brits. And a Native American influenced the shit out of that band, and people need to know that. But if I told you that, you'd be like, come on.
Right.
Steven Tyler's like, you got to say, oh shit. So where I came in handy was I had a fucking great phone book with a lot of my friends. I love playing with Steven Tyler, so I could call Steven Tyler. It's like I was calling Tommy Lee, I was calling all these guys and telling them what I was doing, and they were enthusiastic about it. They thought it was important.
Hell yes.
All these guys that you might just think are like rock and roll or whatever, these guys all care about a lot of stuff, and they're a lot more intelligent than a lot of people think.
You had the rock and roll pedigree in there, and the point where my head just turned. I'm like, are you kidding me? You've got every pull quote that you possibly need from Martin Scorsese in the film. Martin Scorsese's sitting there talking about the contributions, and it's so well done, man. I mean, it really, I love that you talked about the Delta blues and the origination of all this stuff. But you go back down to New Orleans and you go to see, like French, Cajun, Native American influences. And then at the end, when you tie this into where everything kind of changed for you, the place that really resonated with me, if you can see this here, man. So I've got the Zia Prince symbol right there, man. When Randy said you need to go to Indian country and go to so I moved to Santa Fe last year. I was in New Mexico for a year, and
did you really?
Yeah, I did, man. I just I felt the pull. I went down to visit a few years ago. I fell in love with it, man. And you in the movie, you go to Taos. I was living above Santa Fe, way up in the mountains, away from everybody, and it was it was as spiritual as an experience that you could possibly have, man. I grounded myself every day out in those woods, and I love that you touched on it, because like Spanish influence, like the Spanish Indians and Spanish American Indian connection that's there with all the pueblos is so powerful, man. And music and all the culture that goes along with that. You touched on it in the movie, and it was another connection that I felt like when I talk to people in the different pueblos there, like the Zia Pueblo, their logo had been appropriated by the state. They actually took it, put it on the flag without even asking. They took that symbol.
Directions, is that what it is?
That's it. Yep.
Yeah. I wish I was outside right now because my swimming pool I just had built. I got some custom towels with the 4 directions on them going across the whole back wall there.
Well, I designed. I went to the Pueblo, to the Cultural Arts Center there, and I did the Prince logo inside the Zia, but I wanted to ask their permission. I went in and I made a donation to the Cultural Center. Said, look, I know this logo's been appropriated a million times, and rather than do that without your permission, just please let me throw some money your way. And they're like, we'll take your money, but honestly, everybody's but we could care less whether you have it on your arm or not, basically. But I feel like, I don't know, man. I feel like that area is so underpopulated. And you mentioned going to Texas right now too. So maybe talk a little bit about your connection to New Mexico in the movie. I don't want to give away this movie because I want people to see it. It's an important movie for a lot of reasons.
You got to see it on Amazon now because it just finished its run on. It had a 3-year run on Netflix, and it
Yep.
really
Yeah, it's on Prime right now.
yeah, it's
So
on
you can
Prime
watch it
now.
on Amazon Prime. Yep.
And well, what it was that Randy and I, after I did Rod Stewart, Randy and I went with a group of natives and a group of people from Israel and China, Russia. I mean, the wall was still up, and we did this big thing at this Peace Pagoda with and your girl from Berlin, Terry Nunn, was with us. And if you see Terry on your next tour, man, tell her Stevie Salas said hi. I think Pondo always flirts with her and tells her he's my cousin. But so we went to this Peace Pagoda with Julian Temple, the guy who directed David Bowie. I think it was Absolute Beginners, one of those movies. And we shot this video, and Randy was with me, and Zach Wilde flew out to London, and we were all hanging out in London together. And they had just auditioned Mike Inez on bass, and they were talking about Mike, this kid. He's like, this guy's actually really good. Who Mike became one of my dearest friends for so many years. But I remember when he auditioned Ozzy, I was with Zach and Randy. But Randy and I, we would go nuts when we were in Hollywood, like everybody else.
Yeah.
But I didn't have any balance. I was just like, I had new money in my pocket because of Rod Stewart and my record contract. And I was like, ooh, and I was just out of my mind. And that's when Randy said, look, man, you're screwed up. I got to take you to Indian country, and you need to cool out and balance out and get to know who the hell you are. And so I'd never heard that statement before. You need to go to Indian country. I've never heard that because I grew up on the beach in San Diego. My parents are native, but we didn't grow up like natives at all.
Sure. Yeah.
We just knew who we were, but we lived like regular people. I surfed every day and rode skateboards and played some guitar. And he took me up there, and I started hanging out with the Indians up there. And I started kind of going up to Taos. And we all played rock and roll. We had these rock bands. We played native music and rock shit. But it was like there was a balance that I started to find there that I use to this day, where I go there, kind of cool my ass out a little bit, and get ready to get back into which was kind of the real record business and music business is kind of a disgusting place in a lot of ways, because it's just a lot of people with a lot of broken dreams, a lot of people with egos, a lot of people that act like they're better than other people when they're not. And you got to kind of compete with all that. You got to hold your own. You got to be able to, kick someone's ass when you need to, because everybody wants your job. I mean, I can't tell you how many musicians, guitar players want out every gig I ever got. And there's 1,000. There's 1,000 of them in a 1 mile perimeter. Maybe 10,000 of them, and they're there to try to figure out how to steal your gig. Those gigs are hard to get and few and far between. And so, you get this pressure all the time. I'm sure there's a lot of guys who want to play with Flock of Seagulls now. You guys do big shows. It's a great gig. Every song's a hit. You don't have to worry about, is anyone going to be in a crowd tonight? Will there be 3 people there or 3,000? I don't know. You don't have any of those worries. And so, that pressure and that being sick of those kind of people would build up to me. I'd go back to Indian country. I'd cool out. Okay. Get back into it, start making that money, and start doing this shit we're going to do. And it saved my life, really. So Randy Castillo really was a savior of who I am and why I'm even here now.
So what do you do when you go to Indian country? What was your ritual there?
There's no ritual for me. I was just like, you just feel an energy with these guys. My buddy Carpio and my buddy Benito up and we just sit down. The 2 guys sitting with me in Rumble at the end with John Trudell. Those are the same 2 guys that me and Castillo used to come and sit with, like in 1990, 91, and it was like 89, 90. Those are the same guys, but we're all old now. We're all old as dirt. And unfortunately, Randy's gone. But they're still there. When you sit down, you're just like, hey, you just kind of cool right out. And if you don't, they'll cool you out. And motherfuckers out there can kick your ass too. They're good fighters,
It's good though, man, that you've got people that kind of hold you accountable for shit too, right?
If you don't have anyone to hold you accountable, then you're just going to be an idiot.
You
got to have real friends, and you got to listen to them.
Your son, because I think I know that you and your boy are really, really close. And with the wisdom and the experience that you've had, is he into music? Does he play?
He can play all kinds of instruments, but he's not that into it right now. He got sick of it, I think. He went to Waldorf school. But he's thinking about maybe starting to play in a band at his high school now. He goes to a different high school. And there's a lot of really great musicians. I mean, God, there's so many musicians now that can do things that I could never do. We used to have to go on a vinyl record and just, Adam Apple, and just do it 1,000 times. And then
Yeah.
so I remember, you know, Rob Trujillo is, right?
Of course. Yeah. Bass
Rob
player.
Trujillo's from Taos, New Mexico.
Suicidal, Metallica. Oh,
Do you
he's from
know that Rob?
Taos.
Yeah. Do you know his mom and dad are from Taos?
I didn't know.
Yeah, a lot of people don't
He's a
know that.
bad motherfucker, man. I
Oh yeah,
love that
so
guy.
He's a New Mexico boy. So I get a call, like me and him are bros. So I get a call to go to Germany, and he has a side band when he's not with Metallica called Mass Mental. And it's him and it's Armand Sabaleko, you know, playing Stanley Clark's piccolo bass from school days, and it's two bass players. It's Wackerman on drums, Brooks Wackerman on drums,
Yeah.
and they never had a guitar player. But they're going over to Berlin, and we're going to do these other gigs in Europe. And he asked me if I'll come play, and because I could do that, and because I could do that shit on the outside. It was kind of like half this music was like rap, skateboard, hip hop, freestyle, fucking like freeform, fucking weird shit. And then we would go into the Ohio Players, you know,
Oh,
and then
nice.
we get into the Ohio Players for real. And
Yeah.
then, you know, because Robert could slap and all that shit. And then
Yeah.
we would do a whole set of vintage Sabbath. You know, we were playing Lollapalooza and all that kind of shit. And the you had to be able to do all this shit. But what were they just saying, which made me think of Rob Trujillo and why I brought his name up. It's something to do with his band Mass Mental. But
Well, I was asking about your kid, and you said your
so my
son.
kid.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so my kid, and Robert's kid is badass musician, right?
Yeah.
Ty now plays at Suicidal, but when he was little, he was already a badass. So my kid, Robert calls me one day and he goes, "Hey, I'm flying into Austin with Ty, and they're going to play at the ACL festival." He goes, "You want to go get some, you know, lunch or whatever with the kids?" And I'm like, so I grab my son and I grab Robert and Ty, and we go and we eat, and we go, and then we go to the venue, the ACL. You know, it's a big outdoor stadium kind of a festival. And the boys are about 4 years older than my son, but they say, "Come on with us." And they're like little 12-year-olds, and my son was like 8 or something at the time.
Yeah.
And they have their own golf carts, and they're doing their own press. And my kid's just rolling with the kids. And me and Trujillo are like two old men, you know, following them around. And my kid got to see them rock. This band was called the Helmets then. You can look them up. They were called the Helmets. And they played some Zeppelin and shit. And my kid was on the side of the stage. He was just like losing it. He was like rocking out. And so we took him to the airport afterwards, and we dropped him off. And my son says, "Man, Dad, I think I want to play in their band." And I said, "Well, son," I go, "when you get in the band, you gotta kind of like hang out, and then they gotta ask you to maybe see if they play in your band. And they already got, you know, a lot of guys in their band, so maybe, you know, it might not work out, but that's how you do it." He goes, "Yeah, Dad, they're already so good." You know, he was just like, he knew that they were badass, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it
Yeah.
was like,
It's
so my son's been around all that shit. You know, he was at Metallica on the side of the stage watching, and, you know, the guys, they were giving him the whatever, and he's just like, "Hey," you know, he doesn't.
God.
Steven Tyler and my son were texting each other during the Super Bowl, talking about his Skittles commercial, because my son loves Skittles, and he thought the commercial came out pretty good. Tyler's like, "Well, you know, Shane, it came out a little better than I thought, blah, blah, blah." I mean, my son's been around this shit like his whole life, and it's just like, he doesn't
He'll
do
be
shit.
when he's about 22, he's going to come back around and say, "Dad, I really had no idea how badass all these experiences were." You know, I mean, not even at this level, but my youngest son just did the same thing. He said, "I'm listening to the radio, and every single song that comes on is somebody that you've introduced me to on stage at some point or
Yeah,
another." And he's like,
yeah.
I took it for granted then, you know? And I said, the cool thing is, man, is that just as you've seen, every single one of those people is like us, man. Everybody deals with family stuff and taxes and, you know, like car
The
issues
real
and
guy,
whatever else.
hey, the real guys are the real guys. They're real. The guys
Yeah.
that aren't real, you can tell them. They usually crash and burn.
Yeah, man.
I mean, you know, it's
So
when I was really, really young and I left Rod Stewart's band. Rod had this before I was in his band. I used to see him driving around in Hollywood in his Mercedes Benz. He has this custom kind of Mercedes Benz, and I'd never seen one like this in my life. It had this body style to it. It was a 4-door SEL, you know, 560 SEL or whatever.
Mhm.
But it had this body thing, and it was lowered down, and it was like early AMG, before anyone knew what an AMG was. And Rod Stewart had this one. It was the sickest Mercedes-Benz I've ever seen in my life. And I used to see that, go, God, it's my dream car. Okay. 2 years later, I'm Rod Stewart's lead guitar player. We're sitting on our airplane. We had our own airplane. And we're flying in. I hear him on the phone. Yeah, let's put the car for sale. Let's put that one in. We'll get rid of this. And I go, what car are you selling? He goes, I got this old Mercedes-Benz AMG. And I go, that's my dream car. And I go, you gonna sell it? He goes, yeah, I'm selling it. He goes, you want it? I go, I'll sell it to you. I'll give it to you for cheap. I go, I want it. I'm coming over to your house next week and I'm buying it. And I'll bring cash. He goes, okay. I show up and he says, I'm not selling you my car. And I'm like, what do you mean? So I'm not selling you my car. He said, when I was young, I wanted to be a singer. And I got a chance to make a single. At the time, I was a grave digger, okay? Now, they gave me a little advance, and I took that money, and I bought a little flat, because I didn't know if I was ever going to make another dime again. So I bought myself a little tiny flat apartment, in London. And because if the record bombed, I may never have a career, and at least now I'd have a home. And he goes, luckily, the single was called Reason to Believe, which is a beautiful song. Because when nobody would play it. He goes, until one day in America, some city, he knew the city, the DJ flipped it over and played the B-side, which is Maggie May. And that becomes the biggest fucking record of the year. Wow. Okay? So if not for that moment, with that guy just flipped that record over and played the B-side of Reason to Believe, which was Maggie May, he may not have a career, but at least he'd have a house. And so he said to me, take that fucking money and go buy a house. And that's what I did. No and he also said this to me. He said, your career, he goes, is like, a good career is like mountains and valleys. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, because I literally was like a little kid. He was like my dad and my big brother all together at the same time, And he goes, sometimes you're going up, and you keep going. Sooner or later, you're going to reach the top. He goes, but you can't stay there. You can't stay there. After a while, you're going to start going down. And you're going to feel it. He goes, but you got to keep going. Just keep going. No matter how far down you go, you just got to go. Keep going. Do not quit. Keep going. Because sooner or later, you're going to hit that bottom. He goes, you got to start slowly working your way back up so you can't quit when you're going down. A lot of people quit. It's like, oh, I'm selling my stock now. It's only worth half. You didn't sell it when it was up. You sold it when it's down. It's just a natural human thing. Sure. He goes, you never quit, especially when you're down. Because when you're down, he goes, when you're up, you won't stay up. Because when you're down, you won't stay down if you just keep going and thinking and learning and listening. And that was the best advice that he ever gave me in my life. Yeah. And when I see Rod to this day, like I saw him, last February in Florida, and it was like I was hugging, I got a picture. He's hugging me, kissed me on my cheek, and it was man, because I was in his band 35 years ago or something like that, right?
Yeah, right.
Whatever it was, 30 years ago, or whatever, in 1988, 89, and God, it was just like, that's what I mean about lucky. He taught me so much. And it really made a difference in my life. Not just, it didn't make just because of the money.
Yeah. But you were receptive to it, too, man. I mean, if you had been this cocky kid that wasn't going to listen to, some Rod Stewart guy, right? If you're just like, no one could tell you anything that's going to stick, then I don't think he wouldn't have offered that, right?
You know what else it was, though, too? He's an athlete, and I was an athlete. I surfed, I skateboarded, I played football, I played baseball, I played organized sports, and he was an organized sports person. And when we spoke like a band, we talked about a band kicking fucking everyone's ass. Yeah. I remember one time I was sitting in Kansas City in our dressing room, and the song "Bitch" came on by the Rolling Stones. And we had a horn section with Rick Braun and Nick Lane. We had, Jimmy Roberts. We had the sickest horn section. And, Rick Braun went on to become a famous jazz guy. And so I go, fuck, we were rocking out the Bitch. And I'm in the fucking dressing room and I'm like, fuck, let's jam this song tonight, man. We got horns. What the fuck are you talking about? He says, that's the fucking enemy. He goes, that's the competition. I'm here to blow them away and not play their fucking song. And I was like,
oh, yeah.
I'm dumbass me. I was like, I was listening to the Faces the other day and you guys played fucking, an Elton song and you played 2 Rolling Stones songs, and it was like, didn't go over well,
Yeah.
Like, what he was saying was like, fuck you, I'm not going out to play bitch. I'm going to fucking play, my own shit. You know what I mean? And,
man.
But so years later, go 12 years later, 10 years later, whatever it was, having dinner with Mick Jagger at Chandara in Hollywood. And I finally asked him, because now I was this guitar player and this music director, and he was having dinner with me, just bullshit, talking about everything that every guy's talking about, chicks and rock and roll and stories. And so I finally said, how the fuck did you call me? How'd you get my number? What happened? How did that happen? Because he only auditioned 5 guys. He auditioned me, Rusty Anderson, Dave Navarro, Doyle Bramhall II, Jr.
Wow.
And this brother that played with Morris Day. I'm blanking on his name right now, but he was super cool. I can't blank on his name right now. That was it, and I got the gig. And so nice. I go, how'd you get my number? I mean, what made you? How did I get the call? And he says like a real asshole sarcastically. He goes, "Oh, I got your number from Rod Stewart." And then I kind of go, "Oh," and he goes, "Oh, what?" And he goes like this. I really shouldn't make fun of Rod, really. He goes, the old English singer thing. He goes, I shouldn't do that. So then I told him the story that Rod used to tell me, because Rod was pissed at Jagger. Because Rod, fucking the Stones were gonna play, and he talked about Mick Taylor quitting, and I ran into Jagger at a party in London. And I said, "Mick, whatever you do, you're not gonna take Woody from me, are you?" Because Woody and Rod were like fucking best friends. They were like brothers and faces, all that shit that they played with, Stay With Me and all. And Jagger said, "No, Rod, I would never take Woody from you." And 2 months later, he's fucking the Rolling Stones. I mean, Woody,
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like a motherfucker. So,
it is, but I mean, at that level.
Even full-grown superstars still talk the same kind of shit that we all talk.
Well, they're going to battle, man. You already brought up the battle part. I had missed this, man. Eddie Martinez was chatting on the Instagram feed here. So he said, "My best to Stevie. Love what he's doing." So I'm glad he was able to catch up there. Man, you've worked with these iconic guys. Is there anybody that's left on your bucket list that you want to play with and work with?
I had one regret was I was going to do Bowie. Bowie was on my list. I had a list before I left San Diego. I'm going to go to LA and I'm going to play with Rod Stewart, David Bowie, and Mick Jagger. And somehow I ended up getting 2 out of the 3. But I was going to do Bowie. I met Bowie. We hung out. We talked. Then one night I was having dinner with Reeves Gabrels, and he says, "I'm quitting the band." I go, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Your name's on a short list." And I go, "That gig's mine." Because Bowie is my number 1. That's my fucking gig. I could do Mick Ronson and I could do Nile Rodgers, and that is my gig. And something happened. He ended up not calling. He ended up not touring. He got sick, I think, and it just never happened. And that was my one regret, that I did not really push harder to play and record with Bowie, which I really wish I would have. Somebody else I'd like to play with. I mean, I wouldn't mind playing. I hired Stuart Zender from Jamiroquai to play with Abba Salas, on my project, my big Japanese thing that we do, the big arena thing. And I wish I would have liked to have played in Jamiroquai a little bit with him and JK. And I really, really I wouldn't mind playing in the Gorillas. I think the Gorillas.
Oh, nice.
I've opened up for Blur a ton of times, and they kind of suck live because I always feel like Blur acts like they're doing the audience a favor. But I love the singer, and I love him in the Gorillas. So there's a few bands I'd like to play with that I haven't, but not so many.
Yeah. Well, you can. I mean,
I wanted to go. Actually, I really got into you guys. What you guys were doing. I told Pondo, I go, "Hey, if your guitar player gets stuck at the border, call me. I'll get my go out. I'll come play some Flock of Seagulls, because some of those songs are fucking great.
They are really cool, man. I mean, of course, I knew all the tunes from back in the day, but when I really listened to the phrasing and the tone in that stuff, dude was like 16 writing those songs, man. When he was 16 years old, and it's like, to me, it's amazing when somebody can be that old but have something that is representational of a sound this many years later. Everybody knows if that sound's not there, then they don't, it's not legit, for this band. So yeah, it'd be fun to play with you, man.
And it's when you watch, what really blew my mind, when you watch that MTV had a show where they put the original band back together.
Yeah.
And it was like, they sounded like they fucking the first day. It's like the drummers like clank, 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 clam. Yeah. And the bass players are dum, 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 dum. I mean, it's like, there's no way that band could fucking play.
Right.
But the guitar player was still amazing. The guy with the big glasses.
Yeah. Right.
But then by the time they did the gig, man, they sounded like fucking flock of seagulls. And Cheap Trick's,
Yes.
I love playing with Cheap Trick. I play with Cheap Trick every chance I get. I get up, grab a guitar, and play with those guys. And I've had Rick in the studio with me on the Electric Powwow album with Zach Wilde together, playing together. And I had Tom Peterson with me on a bunch of stuff, and I've used Tom in the studio for like when I produce other people. And when they're by themselves, they don't necessarily sound like virtuosos. But when the four of them, or now three of them with Rick's son, with Dax,
Yeah.
even with him, it's like this. When they play together, it's unbelievable. Like when you listen to the fucking Dream Police,
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
I mean, they're doing some shit that's like, what the fuck? And
Right.
it's because, when you have a kid and you're a band and you're Guns N' Roses and you sit in a room and you're work on riffs, you're not counting bars and you're not thinking like nothing against Steve Lukather and Toto, but when they do some shit like that, they know we're going into 16/22 time or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Right.
But
Yeah.
the Guns N' Roses is just like, here's another riff, and they just rip into it, and now all of a sudden the drummer's playing a Bo Diddley beat, and
Right.
it's like, and it somehow makes sense. So when these bands that don't think too much pull off shit, and that's why Flock of Seagulls was, I mean, who told the guy to use an echo? I mean, that was probably something that became the trademark, right?
Right. Yeah. I caught the U2 show at the Sphere back in February. My girlfriend and I went over and caught the show. And I remember Mike actually saying that, Edge credits Paul Reynolds from a Flock for a lot of that sound, man. You listen to it and it's like, holy shit, that
Never thought of
totally
that.
is the same kind of vibe, man.
Never
But
thought of Never thought of that.
that show, as far as like phenomenal shows goes, man. I mean, did you catch the show at all? Have you been in
I
there?
haven't gone yet, but it's funny. I had a conference call with Gilles Picagnès, a big super agent in Canada, and he produces films and TV. And he produces these live events, and he does the Sphere stuff as well. And we were talking about that because I want to go see one of those shows there. I want to see U2.
It's insane. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that show's over now. Dead and Company's in there, and
And I don't want to see it.
I mean, I'm sure John Mayer. John Mayer would be amazing to watch, but probably not with Dead and Company. I am a big fan of his playing. But
John Mayer is a bad motherfucker, but
yeah.
I went and saw him because my old tech Alex Alvarez was teching for him. He techs with Lenny Kravitz, and I mean, he's a badass. He's an incredible guitar player. He just doesn't. He doesn't. I like a guy who's dangerous. He just has no danger for me. Keith Richards is dangerous. You know what I mean? It's I like a little danger, and he doesn't have any danger for me. I like a guy. I like surfing and skateboarding because those guys are like they're fucking animals. You know what I mean? They're a little bit dangerous.
Hell yeah.
Surfing.
All right, so give me your
surfing, and you had to have a kind of. It was like, I'll kick your fucking ass, or I'll fucking go listen to Zeppelin with you. Or, you know what I mean? It was like, I like he's got a great Rolex.
Safe.
Don't get me wrong. He's got badass Rolex. He's got way more Rolexes than I got.
Yeah, man. Well, how about we can wrap it up with your dangerous Mount Rushmore. Give me your Mount Rushmore of like your dream band, vocal, guitar, bass, and drums.
Guitar players or for singers or.
I want you to give me a band: drums, guitar, bass, and drums. Drums, guitar, bass, and vocals.
Okay, you gotta have Bonham on drums. I mean, I can't think right now anybody that really is more influential. Because think about it, Bonham, when hip hop started, they were sampling Led Zeppelin, but then they were sampling Bill Ward.
Yeah, that's.
You listen to Sweetly. 80s drummers play Sweetly. Bam, bam, pop, boom, 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 pop, boom, boom, boom. They play the fucking guitar part on drums. It's not that.
Right.
He's playing. He's fucking grooving. He's playing like a fucking hip hop.
Hell yeah, he is. Yeah.
I would say Bill Ward, early Bill Ward, or John Bonham was my drummer.
All right.
I'm gonna say, you gotta say Hendrix is the guitar player.
Okay.
But
he's gonna have.
Go ahead.
Earmark that because I'm gonna ask you just a little bit about Randy Hansen. But go ahead, keep going. So you got Hendrix on guitar.
Yeah, let's say you got Hendrix on guitar. We gotta have Jack Bruce on bass.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I like Jack Bruce. I like that fucking way he plays, or Felix Pappalardi in that same style.
And he's
and you gotta have Steven Tyler singing.
Awesome. Yeah. Man, it's crazy that the dude is still alive. I love that he is, I like that you guys have a relationship that you can talk
I love
openly, that
playing
your
with him.
kid.
I love playing with him. One time I'm on the side of the stage at this football stadium. Aerosmith's headlining, and I'm in Central America, and I'm down there hanging out surfing, and I come in and they're playing, so I call Brad Whitford, and I come in, I'm hanging out backstage, and Steven sees me, and he goes, "Come on!" He goes, "Get up and play Last Child with us tonight." And I'm like, "Yeah, I can play Last Child. That was my fucking jam when I was in high school." So he goes, "Let's go tell Joe Perry," and he walks in Joe Perry's dressing room, and I'd opened for Aerosmith shows, tons. I'd done all the shows, but Joe Perry, I'd never met Joe Perry. He was always quiet, moody, and Brad Whitford and I would talk all the time and email and text, but I never met Joe Perry. So he walks me into Joe Perry's dressing room. Joe Perry's in there doing that thing, his fucking head's over. He's warming up, doing that Joe Perry thing. And Steven goes, "Hey Joe, remember Stevie Salas?" And Joe just kind of looks at me like, then he's fucking doing his thing. He doesn't say a word. Then he says, "He's gonna get up and play Last Child with us, all right?" Joe just kind of just doesn't say anything. He goes, Steven goes, "Okay," and he left the room and left me standing there. So then I decided I'm gonna say something to Joe Perry, because it's been 20 something years since I've known. I met them in 1988 when we played the MTV Awards together. You know what I mean? I've known those guys a long time. And so I go, "Hey Joe, you know what? I know we know each other, but we've never said a word to each other. And I never wanted to bother you, because you always look like, you don't want to be fucked with." And right then he's playing his guitar, and he looks at me and goes, then he starts playing again. Doesn't say a word. So I get on stage that night in front of 35,000 people, and we play Last Child, and it's all great and everything. And he still doesn't say a word to me.
What?
So fast forward, not that he was ignoring me, he was just like, I wasn't pushing it and whatever.
Well, did he let you take a lead?
Oh yeah, man, they were all good. Everybody was cool in the game.
Yeah, but you guys swapping solos?
No, because I don't do that. I don't like getting someone say, "You play a little, I'll play a little." I think that shit's so cool.
All right.
I want to rock my shit, and so did Brad Whitford.
Yeah.
But so years go by, and we're all at the opening of that new guitar tower in Fort Lauderdale in Hollywood, Florida, the Hard Rock. It looks like a gigantic guitar-shaped hotel. And I'm there where all these special guests, and we're smashing guitars with all these rock stars and movie stars and shit. And there's Joe Perry smashing the guitar next to me. I come walking after my guitar, and Joe Perry walks up to me, puts his arm around me. "Hey, Stevie, man, how you been?" And we start walking and talking like it was fucking like.
Oh my God.
So who knows, right? It took 30 years.
And actually, how like verbose was his conversation? Did he actually have a conversation with you, or was it just a hello?
Yeah, no, it was cool as a motherfucker, man. We went and hung out. Johnny Depp and all these people were there, and it was all cool. It was cool shit. And it just goes to show you, some guys just don't like to be fucked with.
Yeah, man. Well, he lets his music do the talking. Sorry, I had to.
Exactly. You were kidding when you wrote that song, right?
Randy Hansen. You know Randy? I'm sure you have. Like,
I haven't seen him. I knew him pretty well. Yeah.
I had him on the show, man, and I just threw him. At the Wolves. I said, "Do you want to do a little playing, man? You want to just rip out a little bit of Hey Joe or something?" And he did, of course, and he killed it. But that guy. It's crazy that when I had him on the show, all these people came out of the woodwork talking about how influential he was on them and how they had seen him back. Like Jennifer Batten had seen him in upstate New York back in the 70s, right? And said, yeah, he did a backflip off the stage while he's doing his thing, right? And he was talking about how he was playing the whiskey and they're backstage in the dressing room, and Alex, Michael, and Eddie Van Halen walk in, and Eddie's like, "Dude, you're standing on your guitar. It never went out of tune. How the hell are you standing on that thing?" And he's like, "Well, talk to my roadie here, Floyd Rose, and he can help you out." And so that's where he got
Floyd Rose.
That was it, man. Yeah, like backstage with Randy Hansen. Yeah. So I can picture.
That's a great story.
And he has made his living, right, doing the Hendrix thing, and does it so well. But he he's like the sweetest dude, man. He's talking about riding his bicycle to his granddaughter's basketball games, like 12 miles every day. And the dude he's up there, right? He's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
My hips would break, trying to ride then. But I love those.
let me tell you this. Let me tell you something. You mentioned
Yeah.
her name many times. I used to sneak into the Distillery nightclub, and Jennifer and I are friends. I don't get to talk to her too often, but we've always been really cool with each other. But she didn't know me in San Diego when I had my band This Kids. She was this girl that everyone was talking about. It was the only girl in the world that can play Eruption and all this shit.
Right.
And she
Yeah.
used to look like she had this straight hair, she got these gold glasses, and she kind of looked like a nerd. She wasn't anything like
Yeah.
what she became, like kind of a
Right.
nerd. And I snuck into a 21 and over club and watched her play, and I saw her play Eruption. And I always remember that, like, holy shit, that chick is so fucking good. And then, years later when we all made it, to my surprise, she knew who I was. And every time I'd see her, we'd all talk. And she's always been such an incredible. If you see her, I know she lives up by you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We
And
see
if you
it.
see her, please give her a hug for me and tell her I sent my best. And
I will,
think
man.
she's such a cool chick and such a cool person and a great musician.
She totally is. She's, as much as she's a phenomenal musician, like I said about Eddie, I mean, she's one of the most, down to earth, decent human beings I've ever met, man. Love playing with her and
Yeah.
just love, sitting down and having a meal with her because she's funny as shit, dude. She's irreverent. She loves, on the show here, she said that their warm up to be able to sort of like, get their mind right before the Jeff Beck shows, they would have arm fart contests. And she said, like Jeff would win every time, man. He had the pipes, but she arm farted on my show, showing me her talent. So she's a badass guitarist, but dude, she's got, she can actually pull those off too. So, but great chick. And dude, I really, I would think that your list, I've brought up Prince. I know that you're Kravitz. You and Kravitz have a very similar set of roots. I think and I listen to a lot of stuff.
We kind of listen to a lot of the same shit. Yeah, me and Lenny.
Yeah. How about Prince, man? Were you a Prince fan?
Actually, Rhonda Smith called me one time about playing with Prince, and it wasn't going to work out. And I also thought me and Prince probably would get along, because I'm really bullheaded and he's really bullheaded. But of course, he's the bomb, dude.
Yeah.
I met him a few times, and he was always cool.
Yeah.
He was cool. It was like a full of Jello. It was kind of all soft and squishy, kind of. Ugh. But other than that, man, he was ridiculous. He's so good.
Yeah, great player, man. Yeah, I'm always curious to hear.
He hired my friend Donna to be his guitar player in that last band he had, the third girl eyeball. It was called.
Yeah, Third Eye. Yeah. What's she doing now?
I ran into her somewhere. Oh, she came to a film premiere, one of my new films, and she came and hung out with me with her dude. And she's back in Toronto. She was living in Minneapolis for a long time.
Okay.
And she's from Toronto, and she's back there, and she's just cool as shit. I used to do this kids camp, and I bring up Phil X and Bernard Fowler and T.M. Stevens, and John Alderetti, and I bring Donna Delore. I think her name is. No, not Donna Delore. Donna Delore sang for Madonna. Donna, blanking on Donna's last name right now. But Donna, I'd have her come up and she'd play guitar, and she was badass. And then the next thing you know, she got that gig with Prince.
He didn't hire.
Rhonda Smith is ridiculous.
She's a monster for sure, man, for sure. Well, listen, man, so I know that you talked a little bit about this last Lifetime Achievement Award. What's going on next for Stevie? What do you have coming up?
Just making movies, developing television, writing scripts. I did the new MC5 album with Bob Ezrin, and unfortunately Wayne Kramer died, because I went out and played with him with the MC5, which was really a challenge. It was really, really hard.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks it's punk rock, and it's not at all. Dwayne and I really got deep into the records, listening to what Fred Sonic Smith was doing against what Wayne was playing, and a lot of pushing and pulling, and so we put a band together, and we went out, and it was really great. And then we did the new album, and the MC5 record was ready to rock, and we're going to do a bunch of festivals this year. And unfortunately, Wayne just got sick and died. It was just awful.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's I don't have any playing right now on my agenda. I'm scoring a couple of films. I'm just kind of like looking for cool things to do. I don't know. I'd like to do something cool. I'd like to go back out with Koshi Inaba in Japan and do a bunch of big arenas and stadiums.
Yeah, man.
Buy a new house.
Is Texas a good move for you?
It's a huge move. Yeah, gold album still #1 records on the real charts, real #1s. Platinum records, like real sales. Like not just pretend.
Yeah. Well, but was Texas a good move for you?
Texas? It was a great move for my son. He had an incredible
Yeah.
education here, and when I first moved to Austin, it was really fun. You know, my neighbor's Charlie Sexton, who's one of my old friends. He's a great musician.
Nice.
And a lot of the musicians and all those people had to leave because now Austin's a tech town and everything went up like 1,000%. It's super expensive here.
Right.
So it's not as cool as it was, but it's been really great
Yeah.
for my family and my kid.
But, well, I think we've got shows coming up there this summer, man. So if you're around, I'd love to see you.
Yeah,
You know, but
yeah.
you
Get my
know
echo
that
out.
Hondo will be. Let's do it. Let's do it,
Yeah.
man.
Give me a little
Stevie,
notice.
thank you so much, bro. It's really good to catch up with you, man. Congratulations on the Lifetime Achievement Award, man. It's amazing, and
I don't. Thank
I
you.
know we said it before too, but if you know, if people are out there and you haven't seen Rumble, go hit Amazon Prime. This movie is so well done, man. It was fantastic, dude, and it was.
Yeah.
You should be really proud of it. You should be proud.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You know, I'm an Emmy loser, so that's my favorite punk rock thing to say. I was nominated for an Emmy, and I didn't win, so therefore I'm an Emmy loser.
Dude, all you have to do is in the conversation, man. You know that's it, right? There was
Emmy
something you said. There was something you said in the movie about. God, and I'm drawing a blank, man. But or maybe it was actually in your bio, but it was something about you don't have to be the best. You just have to be the
No,
best when it matters the most.
You don't have to be the greatest. It's not important if you're the greatest drummer, greatest guitarist, greatest. You don't have to be the greatest. You just have to be the greatest when it counts.
There you go.
The story
That's
of
the
my
pull
life.
quote.
Because
There you go.
So you can watch me play sometimes, and I suck. And we're like, "What the hell is up with that guy?" But when the chips are down, someone's going to live and someone's going to die. I'm living.
Touchdown, man. Love it. Awesome. Well, guys, if you got here late, man, go back to the beginning of this thing. This is fun. Make sure you share it. Hit the link below, youtube.com/@accesskevin. And tomorrow night, again, Secret Weapon, Mark Powers, who actually, he played with Rick Nielsen as well, man. So there's a Rick Nielsen connection with you and Mark Powers. Stevie Salas, dude, thank you so much. And thank you guys all for being here and chatting. I hope to catch you guys